Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another review video here on the channel. Today we are going to be reviewing the latest book from Alix E Harrow, Starling House, which I've also been emphasising as Starling House, which is a minute difference, but it does feel different. So which one do you prefer? Let me know down in the comments. Some quick disclaimers before we start. I was sent a free digital review copy of this book by the publisher via NetGalley. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I did also have review copies of Alix E Harrow's previous two books, so just so you've got all of the various disclosure things you need, but all opinions do remain my own opinions. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about all of the book. If you want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video, come back when you've read it, we'll talk then. And I will link the story graph for the book below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. This is a horror-adjacent book, so it's well worth looking them up. This is, as far as I'm aware, Alix E Harrow's third major publication, the first of which was The 10,000 Jaws of January, which has a review on the channel. The second one was The Once and Future Witches, also has a review on this channel. We are completing, not a trilogy because they aren't connected, but a triad of videos. This is the third one. We're going to talk about it. As ever, when I'm reviewing books from an author where I've read their previous works, I do tend to refer back to them, but I won't be spoiling either of those books here. This, however, is a contemporary, dark fantasy horror. There's some gothic elements in there as well, but in a contemporary way. Fantasy novel. It's out already in the UK. It came out at the beginning of October. I was trying to get this video out beforehand and it just was not going to happen, so you'll have to bear with me. In this book we follow Opal, who is a young woman living in the small town of Eden, where she has grown up her whole life. She is desperate to not necessarily get herself out of there, but to get her younger brother, who she cares for, out of there and into better things. To do that, she will need much more money than she currently has. She's very captivated by the spooky and storied Starling house, around which there are lots and lots of very scary stories in the town. All that's really known about it that's definitely true is that a famous children's author used to live there, whose book Opal really loved. Opal, through means of the plot, ends up cleaning Starling House for its current enigmatic inhabitant, Arthur Starling, and spooky stuff starts to go down. I've talked about it a little bit on the channel before. I feel like haunted houses have really come into their own in the past few years. Haunted house fantasy stories have been abounding. I've read so many of them. I've enjoyed pretty much all of them. I think there's something about haunted houses, haunted places that really work, but to pull it off, you have to be an author who can craft atmosphere. And in this book, Alix E Harrow does a very good job of that. I thought that the sense of foreboding and trepidation were handled really well. There's something about haunted houses and spooky houses where the reveal of the supernatural can't come too early. You just need that build-up of things maybe being a bit suspicious before you can really dive in. And this book masterfully handled. Really, truly creepy house. The whole small town vibes on top of that. Wonderfully claustrophobic in a lot of ways. I really enjoyed those elements of the story. If you're looking for books to supplement your October TBR or just to take you through to the end of the year, spooky season is after all not just October, it just begins now. This would be a definite book I would add to your list. Let's talk about Opal, our main character. I really liked her. You'd have to be kind of a monster to not like a she's not a single parent, but she effectively is for the sake of this book, working her hardest, just trying to do right by everyone and owning mistakes, all of that stuff you just have to love. What I loved about Opal is she managed to carry the idea of being the heroine of a haunted house story without sacrificing either cynicism or whatever the opposite of cynicism is. Naivety, maybe? What's the opposite of cynicism? It's the nice balance of, I don't actually believe ghosts are real or that haunted houses are real, but things are going on and I'm not going to ignore them as a result of that. I liked her dynamic, I liked her intelligence in that way, I liked her interactions with people in the town, the way she reacts to stuff is really interesting, all around a good horror heroine who manages to defy a lot of the usual pitfalls that come with the tropes of the genre. It's an incredibly readable book. I very much enjoyed the reading experience of it. I think I read it over a couple of days probably and had a good time doing so. It's got a romance, it's got haunting elements, it's got investigation and intrigue, it's got family drama, it's got all of the stuff. If you like all of these different elements together, I think you will have a good time with this book. I think it's been true in all of Alix E Harrow's books that I've read, is I start them and I go a little bit like, I'm not sure about this seems fine, and then I get very, very gripped towards the end. So I would say keep going if you feel a little bit bogged down at the start. Things to bear in mind if you're planning on reading this. The first thing I'll say is that this isn't a horror novel. I would call it a dark fantasy novel. I think it had a lot more plot than a horror book usually does. Now, I'm saying that as someone who hasn't read oodles and oodles of horror, I might be completely misaligning the genre, but this felt to me much more like it lent into the fantasy, particularly as it got towards the end. If you want just horror haunted houses, those are out there too. Also, if you want to get on board with the romance, which is a fair chunk of this book, you do need to appreciate the idea of a brooding man. If the idea of a brooding man as your romantic lead does not appeal to you, this will not appeal to you. I was I was on the fence about the romantic elements of this story. I ended up landing on I was okay with it, but I mostly tolerate a brooding man. And this brooding man was pretty tolerable. I nearly said tolerant, but I meant tolerable. So yes, bear that in mind if you do want to pick this up. There is a romantic plotline and you gotta love a brooder. I've already said I'm not a person who's read a lot of horror, but I have read a lot of haunted house books, especially this year for some reason. They must just be trendy. I think a lot of elements of this in how things pan out are very predictable. Obviously, I can't get into them here because even though they're predictable, I can't spoil them, but they are just a little bit easy to anticipate, and I think the fact that the ending felt a little bit lackluster didn't help with that. So it wasn't feeling like I was getting pushed through right to the end. I felt like it lagged a little bit towards the final chapters. So I would say if you're reading a lot of haunted houses close together, this wouldn't be the strongest of them, especially in how things wrap up. Overall, my reading experience for this book was hugely solid, very good fun. I wouldn't say it completely blew me away to be a 5-star, but it was definitely high up there in the 4 stars. I had a good time with it, as I have had with all of Alix E Harrow's other stuff. I think if I'm comparing it backwards, I think it's probably my favourite book of hers so far, in part because I love the subject matter. I'm a sucker for a spooky book, it's just how it is. But also I really felt like her writing had been elevated in this story, and I guess that makes sense, having come quite a long way from her debut. Comparisons, some other things you might want to read if you've read and enjoyed this, or if you are planning on it. Just Like Home is my favourite spooky haunted house story. That's another contemporary, much more leaning into the thriller angle of things. The children's book author elements of this really made me think of The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, I think it is. Thank you, editing Judith. Not a one-to-one replication, but it did make me remember bits of that story. Hazelwood is a very different book, but similarly spooky, but if you want more YA, that would be the way I would go with that. Another haunted house story that I really enjoy is House of Salt and Sorrow. That's another YA. That is by Erin A. Craig, and I hugely recommend it. It's a haunted house story. It's also a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and it's really spooky. Should you read Starling House? I would say if you are appreciative of a haunted house story, and also if you like books that kind of bridge that gap between young adult fiction and adult fiction, I think this sits really neatly in there. Opal is definitely an adult. This is definitely a story about adults, written for adults, being marketed to adults, but a lot of the things in it reminded me a lot of YA books that I've read. So I would say if you like things that hit that divide, this might be a book for you. I personally hope that they keep leaning into this spooky angle. I think it really works for their writing, and honestly, had there been maybe 1 or 2 tweaks to how the ending played out, this would have been a 5-star for me. What are your thoughts? Are you planning on reading this? Have you already read it? Did you find it because apparently somebody's making it their big book club choice book recently? I don't know if that's public information, so I shall not reveal it at this stage. I don't think I've signed anything to say I can't say that, but better safe than sorry. What are your Halloween reads for this year? Are we leaning into the spooky? Are we doing the opposite? What's going on? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord, where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Or even just to take you through the rest of what's going on with this bit of hair here. What I loved about Opal is she married it's got murder, it's got, does it have murder? Another haunted hound,